All right, last one for this week, and we are going to be talking about, surprise, 2 Corinthians, since we talked about 1 Corinthians yesterday. The Apostle Paul is also going to write this book. However, instead of Sosthenes as the assistant to writing it, he's going to actually have Timothy as his assistant in writing the book. Approximately date is still the same as 1 Corinthians 55 to 57. It would have been shortly after the writing of 1 Corinthians. You can imagine it would probably be just enough time for them to get the first letter, read it, apply some of the things, and then they get back to Paul that there are some other issues that had popped up after that. So the key theme about this is that Paul defends his ministry to the Corinthian church. The details are that the Corinthian believers had apparently addressed some of the problems that Paul had addressed in writing 1 Corinthians. So they had fixed some of the things. They had adapted and done some of the things that he would have them to do. However, there are a lot of them that still questioned Paul's authority. So yeah, we might be doing this stuff, but who are you to speak to us and tell us what to do? So Paul goes into what he calls speaking foolishly in chapter 11, verse 21, where he has to kind of boast of the hardships that he's faced serving Jesus. In chapter 11, verse 23, he says, "In labors more abundant, in stripes above measure, in prisons more frequent, in deaths oft." He also talks about how he suffered a thorn in the flesh in chapter 12, which God refused to take away. In fact, he besought or he begged God 3 times to take that away, but God's response is, "My grace is sufficient for thee. My strength is made perfect in weakness." So Paul, could you imagine, man, 3 times having this major issue and seeking God on it, and 3 times getting answered, nope, 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 and the last time being like, "My grace is going to be sufficient for thee." And Paul's response was, "Okay, Lord, I'm going to continue on." Just amazing. But his parting warning was this. In chapter 13, verse 5, he says, "Examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith. Prove your own selves." In other words, he's looked back at what he has done and who he's been, and he said, "Listen, I can show to you, not that I've worked for my faith, but because of my faith I've worked. And so I can show you that I've proven that. What have you done?" In other words, prove yourself to see if you are in the faith, if you've done anything for the Lord. One of the quotable verses is chapter 5, verse 21. It says, "For he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him." The unique thing about this book, we talked about the thorn in flesh. Paul never identifies it. He never says this is exactly what it was. A lot of people speculate it was his eyesight, that he struggled with that. That's why he always had assistants writing the books with him. And then there's some other things that people speculate, but it seems like eyesight's the one that most people agree on. So what's the key theme that we walk away with, or what's the key idea we walk away with? Christians should respect authority, whether that's in the church, the home, or society at large, because Paul teaches that he had authority. It was his responsibility to do what he was doing. And so those people at Corinth should listen and heed what God was saying through him. The same thing goes in your home. If you're a teenager with parents, in your church with Pastor John, that's just the way that it goes. And that's what Paul encourages us to do. The teen of the day today is Mary Garner. Pray for her. She's got lots going on, but that she would continue. She had asked to be held accountable to spreading the gospel. So just pray that she would spread the gospel this week and invite people to church and just do what God would have her to do this week. Have a good weekend.